Hello, my fellow winners, and welcome to the Weight Loss Winformation Podcast. And I call us winners not because it has anything to do with the number on the scale, but because winners are people who look at their issues and are working to improve themselves. Well, I've heard from some people who listened to last week's episode about people pleasing, and they said that I stepped on their toes a little bit. Not only that, the week before that, when we talked about being a person who really cares too much about what people think about them, it was the double whammy for a lot of people. So this week and next week, I'm doing a 2-part series about how to be a doormat no more. Here's how it's done. And I could call this episode a condensed version of 3 chapters from the book, The Next Conversation by Jefferson Fisher. I first heard about this amazing book, and I am really going to encourage everybody to get this book or listen to it on Audible because it's phenomenal. Jefferson Fisher is an attorney, and he has honed his communication skills, verbal skills, nonverbal communication skills, and getting to the point in his work as an attorney to the point that they are really, really good and can offer you and I some amazing tips so that we're more direct, we're more succinct about how we say things. I tend to ramble on in my podcast. There are probably ways I could be more succinct. We'll work on that one. But in these last 2 episodes, we've really talked about some problematic behaviors that are likely to interfere with your ability to follow through with the behaviors that are required to either lose weight or sustain the weight loss. And a lot of that, especially in these last 2 episodes, has to do with our level of confidence or our level of self-esteem. And that affects our willingness to stand up for ourselves and be a little more assertive with other people. It affects our care and concern over what other people think about us. So, regardless of how you became that way, in these 2 episodes, we're going to use information from the book, The Next Conversation, to help you overcome some of those unhealthier behaviors that are interfering with you following through with the things you know what to do to meet your goals. So if you're sick and tired of being a people pleaser at the expense of your own physical and emotional health, then in this episode, you're going to get some tools that will absolutely, not kidding, absolutely help you know how. A lot of people say, okay, that makes sense, but I don't know how to do it. Well, you're going to learn some specific how to do it in this episode, how to talk to other people so that they listen to you, so that they hear what you're saying, so that they comprehend and value what you're saying. And you are going to model that valuing of what you're saying because you're going to value it yourself. Their respect for you is going to increase. Your respect for you is going to increase. And more importantly, much, much more importantly, is that respect that you have for yourself. The more your confidence increases by doing these things, the more your respect for yourself increases. And I'm not kidding when I say when those things increase internally for you, other people's respect for you increases as well. So it's going to take some time. Remember, these things don't change overnight. Just because you hear something once or you listen to it 7 times doesn't mean you're automatically going to implement these things perfectly, but you're going to have a starting point. So what we want is to make sure that what you want, your goals, what are they? We want to make sure that your goals, maybe it's in the context of weight loss, but it could also be in the context of weight loss, health, emotional health, your job promotion, whatever it is. We have goals in all kinds of areas of our lives. So we want to stop being a people pleaser, stop worrying so much about what other people think so that we can follow through with what we know it takes. There are obstacles. Most of the work that I do is helping people identify, okay, here's what I want to do. Do you know what your goals are? Here's what I want. Not, I just want to lose weight. That's not a specific goal. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But when you've identified your goals, how do I get that done? And then when you know how to get it done, be patient here. Let me cook, as they say on my morning radio show. Let me cook. Let me finish my thought here, because I know I'm taking you on a tangent here. But we know what to do, but we don't always follow through. What are the obstacles that are in the way of us not following through? So we're going to talk tonight. It's tonight because I'm recording tonight, but it might not be tonight when you're listening. But make sure that you know you're clear about your goals. What are these goals? What are your values? So that your words and actions can match them. Because if your words and actions don't match, you're not going to reach the goals. Specifically, we're going to spend the majority of the time in these next 2 episodes talking about the combined skills of assertive communication, setting boundaries, and framing a conversation. What is that? What does it look like? How do you do it? We're going to take these 3 skills that are identified and spelled out in a lot of detail in the book, The Next Conversation, and we're going to use those to help you stand up for yourself so you feel proud of what you're doing, so that you have the how do I do it on an outline. And then you can practice. You can write it out. You can practice with a friend. You can practice with a therapist. But by doing this, you're going to take more control over your life in whatever areas the goals are that you're working on. And we're going to go through examples galore. So it's not just, oh, here's the philosophy. No. It's here's the philosophy and here's how you can put it into your life today. So again, the book that I'm getting the information from is The Next Conversation by Jefferson Fisher. And I'll tell you, some of this is just me rambling here at the beginning. I'll tell you when I get into his specific material, because I don't want to claim his information as my own. So we want to make sure, like I said, the first part of this is making sure you're clear about what your goals and your values are and matching your behaviors with those goals. And a lot of people, in the world of, let's say it's weight loss, a lot of people do the things that are necessary to lose the weight. But as many people have experienced, they run out of steam. And they do the things only for a while. And the result of not following through is a return of weight for most people. So my question to you in this specific example is, what gets in your way? What happens that you fall back into your, quote, old behaviors? So if you're not being consistent with meal planning, or if you're not being consistent with eating protein first, or if you're not being consistent with drinking enough water, or you're not being consistent with taking your vitamins, if you're not telling people what you need or want, what is it that's in the way? What comes between knowing what you need to do and doing what you need to do? We want to identify those obstacles so that we can work toward the goal, but you got to know what the goal is. So if I say I want to be a runner, that's pretty vague. But if I say I want to, see, the reason I'm talking about this is the 4th of July weekend. And in Atlanta, they do this huge race called the Peachtree. And my 13-year-old grandson is running in the Peachtree for the first time this year. And his dad and his paternal grandmother, this grandma ain't doing the Peachtree. They are big, big runners, but I want you to know that I'm an example of not following through with the goal I had 100 years ago to become a runner. So I wanted to become a runner so that I could run a mile. That was my goal. So I did the things it takes to become a runner, using like the Couch to 5K, although this was before that was even invented, I think. And I'd start with the small distances, and then I'd walk, and then I'd run. But you know what? That only lasted about a week or 2. I didn't follow through with what it took to meet my goals. Why? I lost confidence. I lost interest. I decided I didn't care if I became a runner, whatever it was at that time. You may have done this with your goals with weight loss. I'm going to give you another example. And the somebody in this example, again, is me. For forever, I'm like, I'm going to learn to speak Spanish. So this year, as in many years before, I took some steps to move me on my goals of learning to speak Spanish fairly fluently so that at least I can go to a country where they speak Spanish and do more than ask where the bathroom is. Well, this year I bought the Babbel and I bought the workbooks and I bought some worksheets and I downloaded and I printed them out. But you know what? They're still sitting there. So I am that person in this arena. So that is not going to help me to reach my goals. What interferes with my following through? Well, in the case of the Spanish and the running, they're not really important to me. I found other exercise that I absolutely love, and I am very committed and have been for 35, 40 years. I walk 3 miles or I do an hour of yoga. I love those things. Nobody has to encourage me. So I follow through with that. So, what is it for you? What are your goals? And if you think your weight loss goal is about reaching a specific goal weight, then I'm going to ask you to back up about 4 or 5 episodes and listen to the podcast episode about goal weights being a figment of imagination that interfere with your real goals of being healthy and feeling better and doing more and living longer and all those things, improving your health. But once you get clear about your goals, and I call these things meaningful matters. What is meaningful to you? What matters to you? Learning to speak Spanish doesn't really matter to me. Living a healthy lifestyle absolutely does. And a great question to ask yourself or to say to yourself is, it matters to me. It's very meaningful to me. It matters to me as evidenced by, and in my case, with exercise, as evidenced by the fact that at least 5 days a week, I am either walking 3 miles or doing an hour of yoga. It's just what I do. I drink water all day long. I take vitamins. I eat healthy at least 85% of the time. So I'm doing the things that it takes for me to reach that goal. Because living longer, being around with my grandkids, playing, traveling, those things are super important to me. Whereas, my phone will translate Spanish for me. It's not that big a deal. So for you, identify, at least in this area, as this podcast is dedicated to your health and your lifestyle and your weight, what specifically are your goals, staying away from a number, about wanting to live at a healthier weight or live a healthy lifestyle. So once you're clear about those, write them down, because we have to keep those things at the forefront of our mind and post them somewhere. Then, if you find out I'm not doing the things I know to do, because the things to do, they're called the gotta do-ems. If you haven't heard of the gotta do-ems, go to my website, ConnieStapletonPhD.com, and download yourself a copy of the gotta do-ems. They are the scientifically proven ways to lose weight and keep the weight off. Now, there's probably a list of psychological gotta do-ems that you're not familiar with, but you can download that too. But for now, I'm talking about the biological gotta do-ems, which are the water the follow through of the exercise and the vitamins and all of those things that every diet you've ever been on had you do. But it didn't teach you a lot of the skills you need to do to stay motivated, like we're talking about tonight, which is standing up for yourself, no longer being a doormat, letting people know what you need from them, letting them know how they can help you in this process, letting them know you're not going to eat this or that, letting them know you're not going to go to buffets or whatever it is. So, when we are talking about being too much of a people pleaser, because that is a huge obstacle when it comes to following through with what you need to do to maintain a healthy weight, a healthy lifestyle, and being a doormat, being a people pleaser, doing so many things for other people at the exclusion of yourself. These are real obstacles to following through with healthy behavior for yourself. And both of these things that we've talked about are the result of a lot of possible reasons, right? Maybe I've had people tell me just today, as a matter of fact, I was working with a woman and she said in her family when she was growing up, children were to be seen and not heard. And if they dared to disagree with a parent's opinion, if they dared to argue out loud with one of another, if they dared to speak up to either one of their parents with anything that could even hint at disrespect, they were shut down in a hurry. And that was done. What did she tell me it was done with? A wooden spoon. That's what it was done with, a wooden spoon. So they absolutely learned. And so as an adult, it's very difficult for her to speak up for herself. It's very difficult for her to voice her concerns. Maybe you had a parent that modeled the behavior of not speaking up for themselves. Or maybe you had a parent that put up with the other parents' tomfoolery all the time. They never said, no, you're not going to talk to me that way. Or no, we're not always good. Darla, my dog, drop it. There we go. She's got a squeaky toy and I'm not appreciating it during the podcast. Had to take her squeaky toy. See how assertive and firm I was with my dog? I didn't say, do you want to have that toy? I said, give me the dang toy. Okay. So maybe, the same woman I was working with this morning who said they dared not open their mouth and speak up on their own behalf told me that her mother fawned, and we talked about fawning last week, all over her dad. She would taste his coffee. She would taste his soup to make sure it wasn't too hot. I'm talking, whoa, talk about learning not to have an opinion, not to speak up for yourself, not to care if that other person cared about what you thought. So maybe keeping your mouth shut kept your face safe. I've worked with people who are like, if I opened my mouth and had a differing opinion than my mom, she'd slap me right across the face. Or this is the case that I've heard from a lot of people who do struggle with weight or did struggle with weight as a child for sure. Maybe they kept their mouth shut, didn't speak up for themselves, didn't stand up and set boundaries or tell people to back off, because if they kept their mouth shut, people wouldn't notice them. They wouldn't pay any attention to them, and that meant they probably would be picked on less. So there are a lot of reasons, and probably many, many more, that if you are a person who cares so much what people think about you, or if you are a person who has, is a people pleaser and has trouble speaking up for yourself, there's reasons. I understand that. I have compassion for that. But whatever the reason is, as an adult, you do not want to be a doormat any longer. And the reasons are many, because if you're a doormat, and especially in this journey of losing weight or, setting, food parameters, that doesn't mean anything's off limits necessarily, but setting parameters, you've got to be able to let people know what they can do to help you. They may think that it's fine for them to eat anything they want around you, and for some people it is, for other people it isn't. If it isn't all right for people to eat your trigger foods around you, people in your home, then are you able to ask them not to? We need to be able to share our thoughts and feelings with people so that not only can other people help you, but you can help yourself. And by helping yourself and speaking up for yourself, you improve your own self-confidence. And that improves your willingness and ability to stand up for yourself more. And then you respect yourself and other people respect you more. And it's all that great, happy, healthy cycle. And not only that, if you've got people in your life that look up to you, kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, siblings, you can teach them, A, that it's okay, and B, that it's well worth the while to stand up for yourself. Enough already. Let's get on with this business of how. Let's get on with learning how to put the combined skills of assertive communication, setting boundaries, and framing a specific conversation to help you stand up for yourself. And again, the goal of this, in addition to being able to follow through with the gotta do's for weight loss and sustained weight loss, is to help you feel better about yourself, to feel proud of yourself. That is a big part of this whole thing. That is often an obstacle that gets in the way of people following through. All right, so let's take a few minutes and talk about a summary of assertive communication. And this information is definitely from the Jefferson Fisher book, The Next Conversation. So, confidence. He talks about confidence and he says confidence is an active process. It's not something, all right, I'm going to be infiltrating his thoughts with some of my thoughts, but the gist of this information comes from Jefferson Fisher. He says that confidence is an active process that you build on and engage in with specific behaviors. So I'm translating and saying we aren't necessarily born with this. It's something that we can improve and we can practice. If we've lacked confidence because it was literally knocked out of us by being slapped across the face, then we can learn this skill and we can improve our confidence through trial and error. So Jefferson Fisher says the question isn't, how do I feel confident? The question is, what can I do to create experiences that build my confidence? Confidence, he says, is found in the doing, and that doing is called assertiveness. Love, 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 love that. So it's not where can I go to get a shot or an infusion or, chug down a gallon of confidence. We can only develop confidence by doing things that improve our confidence. So it's not something that we can ingest or are necessarily born with. We may be born with certain traits that, help us get it more quickly, but we have to engage in behaviors. We become confident. Think about being a child. Kids become confident walking by falling down and getting back up, falling down and getting back up. Preschool and kindergarten and first graders learn to have confidence in tying their shoes by messing it up and starting over again. We learn to write our names and our letters by messing it up, but keep trying. So it's the doing of the things that leads to the confidence in doing the things. Very cyclical, right? So assertiveness is an action. Confidence is a feeling. This is Jefferson Fisher again. Confidence is a feeling. Being assertive, asserting oneself, is an action. He says you can think about confidence as kind of an inside thing. I feel confident in my ability to whatever it is. But assertiveness is an outside thing. People can see me asserting myself. My dog a few minutes ago heard me asserting myself. I love this statement, and you might want to coin this somewhere, not coin it. It's already been coined. You might want to write this down somewhere. He says, to assert yourself is confidence in motion. So if I'm feeling confident, I'm going to demonstrate my confidence by asserting myself. I'm going to say, I would prefer to go to this movie rather than that movie. I am doing something that you can see and feel and hear. It's asserting myself, and I'm feeling internally confident about my decision and sharing that information with you. So assertiveness, he says, is found in the way that you say things. It's holding my head up. It's looking you in the eyes. It's the leaning into the words you use. Confidence is an inside thing. And the more confidence you have on the inside, the more assertive you are willing to be on the outside, the better your eye contact is, the better your posture is, the more straightforwardly, the more assertive your tone is. So confidence and assertiveness, he says, feed into each other. That's very clear. So together, the pairing of confidence and assertiveness create a positive feedback loop. So I'm going to speak assertively. I would like to go to this restaurant. They serve things that are appropriate for how I'm choosing to eat. Speaking that with a confident tone, speaking that and looking at you in the eye produces the feeling of confidence. And that confidence gives me the strength and the courage to speak assertively. So these things work together and go hand in hand. And he calls this a life-changing combination. And I 100% agree with that. The more practice you have. Now, is it smart to go into your office, your boss's office, and say, I think I deserve a job? I mean, a raise, or a job and a raise and a job and a promotion and a raise. I wouldn't start there. I might start by looking in the mirror and saying to myself, looking at myself directly in the eyes. And we did an episode not too long ago with Dr. Joan Brugman, who talked about mirroring. When we see this happening, we experience the emotions. So by looking at ourselves in the mirror and speaking assertively, acting as if, practicing, we can improve our skill at this. So we can practice with ourselves. So if you want to let your friends know, I want to go to such and such restaurant because their menu aligns with my health goals, then you stand in front of the mirror, you look at yourself and you say, exactly that. I'd like to suggest we go to such and such restaurant as their menu meets my health goals. Does that work for you? No, they don't have to agree with you, but you have spoken assertively. You have built confidence, which gives you the ability to say, okay, if you don't like that one, would you consider such and such and such and such? So you have options. It gives you the confidence to come back with another assertive statement. So in the book, The Next Conversation, he says to be able to stand up for your needs and opinions in a way that gains you credibility rather than takes it away is a power beyond words. And think about it. Think about people you know who come across very confidently, not arrogantly, not like they're hiding their insecurity with grandiosity or bravado, but people who are just say, no, I don't really like that kind of movie. I would like to go to a comedy. I don't like scary movies. Or maybe they say, it's not all right for me at this time in my life to eat a lot of carbs and sugar. I'm going to decline the invitation to the bakery. Standing up for yourself gives you credibility, not only with the other people, but within yourself. And that boosts the feeling of confidence. In his book, he gives a list of 10 different ways to practice assertiveness. I didn't include all of them. I think some of them were redundant, and I don't want to take up all of the time with this, but I want to share some of these ways of practicing assertiveness. And let me just repeat. Assertiveness is an action. It's a doing. It comes by actually engaging in an activity, speaking up for yourself, saying what you want, saying what you need. So you got to start with the basics. It's kind of like if you want to be a writer, you've got to know how to put a word together. And to put a word together, you have to know how to use a letter. You have to know what a letter is, what it sounds like, and all of those things. So to practice assertiveness doesn't mean you're going to listen to this podcast and you're going to go out automatically be the most assertive one on the block. But you can start. And he says you start by building a vocabulary of assertive words. And then you find some phrases. And then you find words and phrases that convey confidence without aggression. So sometimes people confuse assertiveness with aggression. So assertive is a win-win. Now, this is me talking out of his book, but we've had many episodes on communication skills and they were good. So I would go back and listen to them, but you can listen to an entire episode about assertive communication. And what it means is we're not bullying, we're not being loud, we're not being forceful. So I could say, we're going to this restaurant. That's aggressive. That is not kind. It is not assertive. Assertive is, I would prefer to eat at this restaurant. It's being kind. It's saying what you think without being pushy. So we want to be assertive without being aggressive. So you learn some words and some phrases, which I'm going to share with you. He gives us some examples here. And then you learn tone, right? If your tone is too soft and you're not looking at anybody, then, it's not displaying assertiveness. I'm going to take a little tangent here because a lot of times, and this is something that is worth your frustration and anger, and I get it. There may be a couple of things at play here. So what I'm talking about right now is people get angry after they lose weight and people treat them differently, like at the office perhaps, or in a social circle where people who maybe once didn't speak to you now speak to you, and people get angry about that. And from the perspective of, was I not good enough to talk to when I weighed more? I totally understand that anger. It is not okay for people to make judgments or make sweeping generalizations about you as a person based on your weight, the color of your hair, the color of your skin, none of that. What I want to say about that is there might be a possibility that when you're not feeling confident or assertive, let's say you're walking down the halls at work and you don't want people to look at you because you've experienced, people looking at you and pointing at you, maybe laughing at you because of your weight in the past. So your eye contact is poor. You're looking at the floor, you're kind of walking with your head down and maybe your shoulders are hunched forward a little bit, so that nonverbal communication is giving off passive. It's not confident. It's not assertive. So now for a lot of people, they tell me that when they lose weight, they feel better. They are more engaging with other people that they may not have been in the past too. So when you are feeling better about yourself, you probably walk with your head held a little bit higher. You probably have better eye contact. So don't hear what I'm not saying. I am not saying it is ever okay to be disrespectful to anyone for any reason or to not engage with someone because of their weight. That is absolutely not okay all of the time. But I do want you to think about how they may be acting or interacting with you may have something to do, even if it's only 10%, with how you are carrying yourself as you become more confident. Just a side note. Okay, we're going to go back to building this vocabulary of assertive words and phrases, but I want you to keep in mind as well your confidence in nonverbal language, like holding your head up and making eye contact, because that makes a difference too. All right, so we want to embody self-respect and that feeling of confidence, and that can come through in our body language and our verbal language. But there are, he says, it doesn't matter if it's an email or if it's a text, if it's a video conference, whatever it is, if it's at work or if it's with your friends. He said, every word matters. Now, if you are part of the Berry Aftercare program online, one of the people who is most important in creating that program is Laura Preston. And Laura says constantly, words matter. Words matter. And that is a point that is driven home by Brene Brown. And again, here in this book by Jefferson Fisher, he says, every word matters. Nothing, he said, nothing matters more than word choice. So he gives some examples here. And then I'm going to fill in some that are specific to the weight journey. So here's some before and afters. And here's an uncertain, unsure way of presenting something. And this might be you or me or somebody who's not using assertive communication. But here's the example. I'm sort of wondering if maybe I should ask the team. I'm just sort of wondering. Not assertive. Here's his assertive way of saying that. I'll ask the team. So instead of being like, oh, I don't know, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, I'm wondering. He says, be assertive. I'm going to ask the team. Let me put this out there to you. Here's an unsure way of communicating. I guess I'm looking for a bit more clarity about your expectations. It's uncertain. It leaves ambiguity. But here's an assertive way to say the same thing. I need more clarity about your expectations. Oh my gosh, what a difference. I'm looking for a little bit more clarity. You're fumbling around, it doesn't really capture somebody and, say, wow, that's an assertive person. They know what they're asking for. An assertive way of saying that would be, I need more clarity about your expectations. I'm not demanding. I'm not being rude. I'm just saying it directly without so many hesitating words. So what about you? I'm wondering if there's a way that maybe you could help me. Huh? Say, I would really appreciate if you could help me with this. And that could be in moving your furniture or it could be in keeping unhealthy foods out of the house. Rather than fumbling around and, oh, gee whiz, golly, I was just thinking maybe that it would be okay if I asked you that. And don't apologize. I'm sorry to ask you this, but ask for what you want. Assertive. Could you please help me with this? I'd appreciate if you would help me with this. So specify, be clear. So your words matter. You don't want to jumble it all up with insincere or insecure sounding words like maybe, gee, I'm kind of looking for. No, this is what I want. This is what I need. Can you help me? The second thing he says is prove it to yourself. Remember, confidence is in the doing. So you've got to do the asking with an assertive voice. This isn't going to come naturally to you if you've struggled with this for your whole life. That's why I'm encouraging you to practice. So if you have a therapist or a coach or a best friend or somebody you really trust, you say, this is what I would like to do. At work, I would like to ask for a promotion. And then you can practice. Here's how I would do it. I've been here a long time, and maybe if it works in the budget and if it's okay with you, I'd kind of like a promotion. That's not going to cut it. You're not coming across, you're coming across like a mouse. You want to come across like a confident adult human being. I'd like to talk to you about a raise. I'd like to talk to you about that job promotion. Boom, there it is. I wasn't rude. So you need to work through your natural approach. And if there isn't any, trying to come up with one, and then having someone help you to choose those words carefully, get rid of all the extra words so that you can look at yourself in the mirror and practice these things, write these things out. Had a woman at the retreat a few weeks ago for whom this is extraordinarily difficult for many valid reasons. And so she's had to learn to write out what she wants to say. Sometimes she hands the person the piece of paper to read. Sometimes she reads from it. Or you may practice it before you go in and then deliver it without notes, whatever works for you. I think in last week's episode, I shared with you that I put a sticky note next to my phone back in the day that said, when people would ask me to do something, I would automatically say, yes, I was that doormat. So the note said, I'm going to have to check my schedule and I will get back to you. Very assertive, very kind, very taking time to make a decision for myself. It bought me some time. All right. So he says, prove it to yourself. Prove it that you can be confident, meaning you have to practice doing it. So you have to start proving to yourself that you're going to do what you say that you're going to do, or I'm going to say this to my mother. I'm going to tell her that when I come to her house, I would appreciate if she didn't hand me a bag of unhealthy groceries when I leave. Now, when we have a big emotional history with somebody, it's real easy to lose our crap and become very aggressive. Quit giving me this stuff. I don't want this anymore. I've told you 1,000 times. Or you might just take it and then sit with all that temptation of the unhealthy foods that mom just gave you. But writing it down, practicing it with your friends, practicing it with the mirror, practicing it with your therapist, and maybe sending it to your mom or however you need to do it, that gives you the practice. Practice makes progress. So we practice this, and then as we start to feel more confident in our practice rounds, we may be more willing to do it in purpose. And Jefferson Fisher says the key is to say it out loud. Say what you're going to do. Say what you want. Say what you need out loud and in the present tense. So his examples are, I'm moving forward from this conversation. Now, that doesn't sound like anything I would ever say, but what I might say is, I'm no longer going to discuss this. That's a good way to say, I'm done. No more. Because maybe things are getting too heated. Or I might say, and this is kind of what my husband and I were encouraged to do, say, things are getting too heated right now. I'm going to stop this conversation. We can come back to it later. And I like that because it's like, okay, it's important. We need to discuss it, but not right now. Another example he says is, I'm asking for your permission. And how we might use this is, I'm asking for the family's permission to keep sugar cereal out of the house. Or I'm asking your permission to put this on this high shelf where I'm not likely to see it. I'm asking for your cooperation in da 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 da. I like that approach. It's very direct. It's very assertive. I'm going to set a reminder for us to discuss this later. It's just nothing. It's just assertive. I'm setting a reminder. It's not, well, I kind of think we should, or I sort of wonder if maybe you could keep these cereals out of the house, or I guess it's okay if you leave them in here, but would you really mind if you just, take the hesitation out of your voice, use your action words, use your intentions. I'm asking for your permission to put your foods that aren't good for me on a higher shelf. I'm asking your cooperation in keeping these out of the main pantry. Very direct, very straightforward. He says, express your needs unapologetically. State the need. And you can state it by saying, I need. I need. It's a simple shift in language. It's empowering. You take ownership of what you need. I need this shelf to be free of tempting foods or trigger foods for me. I need to talk to you about this weekend. I need you to know how what you just said affected me. I need your help in keeping our home a safe environment for me, given my health needs, given my desire to improve my lifestyle. I need your help. I need your cooperation. I need to ask you. I need those words. Now, here's what you got to understand. Just saying what you need does not automatically mean that people are going to acquiesce. They're like, fine, but I'm not going to come, I'm not going to do that. But it doesn't matter because what you're doing, I'm looking around because I have a whole bunch of deer walking past my fence out there. I'm surprised that dog isn't barking. State your needs. Again, not expecting that other people just go, oh, okay, if you need that, but you're being your advocate. You're stating very assertively what you need. Or you can say, I would appreciate. Now, to me, I prefer that language. In his book, he says, I need. I prefer, I would appreciate if you would keep these things out of the house. I would appreciate if you would keep these trigger foods out of my line of sight. I would appreciate your cooperation in not bringing those things into the house. I prefer that language. You find language that works for you as long as it's assertive and directly states your needs. The next suggestion that Jefferson Fisher has is he says, don't undersell. If you don't believe your words have value, neither will the other person. And that's true. And that's why the tone of your voice is also important. So I could say, I really need you to cooperate with me. And I need you to keep this food. And I sound like, I'm terrified, which I might be. But if I've practiced and if I've developed that confidence and it's like, sometimes you got to act as if you've got to become that actor. Practice your lines over and over and look at yourself in the mirror and do it out loud. But you've got to sound like you mean it. And again, I'm not saying aggressive. You need to do this. That's just inappropriate. That's being a bully. Being assertive is, I would appreciate, I would appreciate your cooperation. I would appreciate if you could pick up your dirty socks. I would appreciate if you'd put your backpack away when you walk in the door. Those kinds of things. So he says use phrases. If your phraseology, if the words you choose undervalue your worth, and he says things like this, which he acknowledges. We do this so that the person thinks you're coming from a good place. You want to soften your approach a little bit. So what we tend to do are things like, I really hate to bother you. He says, don't do that. I need a minute of your time. Is this a good time, or would you prefer I come back? So get rid of those things that are good intentioned, but make you sound less confident. So for example, I know this really might sound stupid. This might be a stupid question. Forgive me. I'm sorry for the stupid question. Stop it. Because you don't come across assertively. You don't come across confidently. You don't sound confident. So when you have something to say, choose your words and say it very directly. You can use the kindest tone so it doesn't come across in any kind of ugly way. A couple other examples that he says, don't do this. I'm probably missing something here. Or, gosh, you probably know better than I do because you are the expert. It's like, don't placate, don't downplay yourself. You're trying to be humble. You're trying to be self-deprecating. And he says that's admirable, but it's not received that way by the listener. He says, instead of, the signal that you're sending is, I see myself less valuable, less intelligent, less important, less in need of whatever. It casts this doubt, this shadow of doubt over your capabilities. It's like, well, gosh, I'm sorry I'm bothering you. Like, I'm not important enough. Or, golly, this might sound stupid. Like, I might be a stupid person. So that's how people might hear that, even though your intention might be just to not sound arrogant or come across too strongly. But he's encouraging, and I concur, come right out and ask and say. So he says, replace things with, what are your thoughts on this? Like, well, you might know better than me. I'd like to know what you think. No. Just say, I'd like to know your thoughts on this. This is what I was thinking about our proposal. How does that sound to you? This is what I was thinking would be a win-win for food in the house. How about I keep my foods on this shelf and you keep yours in there? How does that sound to you? So you're being kind. You're taking into account another person's thoughts, their needs, but you're saying it directly in a way that says, this is what I need. I would appreciate your cooperation with this. But you're not kowtowing. You're not putting yourself as a one down person. The thing about assertive communication is it's you win and I win. It's a win-win proposition. I want you to know I'm taking you into account, which is why I say, how does that sound to you? Would that work for you? What are your thoughts on that? I'd like your input. So you include them knowing you matter too, but I'm letting you know this is exactly what I need or what I want. Another tip he says is cut the excess. In other words, it's a lot of those extra words. And it could be those self-deprecating words like, I might not know about this. Like, you're the expert. We don't need those. Those are self-deprecating. But there's a lot of excess words that we use. And when I write anything and I do that Grammarly spell check thing that checks every time I have many issues with conciseness. So I know that I need to take excess words out of what I write and clearly what I say, because I'm on this podcast for a full hour every time. But examples that he gives are, he says a lot of other phrases clutter your assertiveness. He says, see if any of these ring a bell. So maybe you go into somebody and you explain and you say, well, what I'm trying to say is, don't say what I'm trying to say is, just say what it is. All I'm saying is, don't say all I'm saying is, say what it is. I just find it funny how, no, say what you're thinking. Here's other examples, he says. No offense, but you don't need to say that. Get rid of the extra words. It's just that. Don't need that. I mean, don't need that. I just need to say, to be honest, I'm just going to be honest with you. Don't take this the wrong way. I'm just curious. So I'm thinking like maybe he says these phrases undermine your credibility, but even worse, they're not very genuine. He says, cut them. You don't need them. Just say everything after that instead of saying, no offense, but that restaurant isn't good for me. Just say, that restaurant isn't a healthy choice for me. It's just that, you hurt my feelings when you say that. I felt hurt when you said that. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, sometimes it comes across wrong to me. When you say this to me, I feel, or when you say this to me, it sounds to me like, so cut out that superfluous stuff. I'm thinking maybe like we could, go do the bowling thing and then no, I'm thinking we could go bowling, which you would like, and then go to the book club, which I would like. So it's win-win. I hear you. I'd like you to hear me. I'm taking your thoughts into consideration. I'd like you to take mine into consideration. And that's why we write this stuff out and practice it with a coach or a therapist or a good friend. And they're like, oh, too much. Get rid of that. Get this book, highlight the stuff, write out your thing, and then see if you're doing any of these things. So, assertive communication, just to summarize it, what he's saying in this book, so that you are a doormat no more. Doormats do not use assertive communication. Doormats are passive. You are a confident adult, or you're learning to be. That's why we're winners in this. We are working to better ourselves in all areas of our life. So these skills can be applied to your weight loss journey, your weight maintenance journey, and every other area of your life. Parenting, partnering, at the job, with your mother, with your friends. All right. Assertive communication means you use assertive language. I want, I would appreciate, I need. Those are assertive words, not if it's all right with you. I want, I need. Now that may sound like, oh, I could never. Well, write it out and say it out loud and just try it. I would like, I need, I would appreciate. Sometimes that I need bothers me, and I'll tell you why, because it's almost like telling somebody you need to do this because I'm saying it. And that may be a personal issue that I have, but if it works for you, then do it. It is most certainly assertive, but don't use it aggressively. Like, I need this, and by God, you're going to do it. It's, I need your help. That is not aggressive. But I need you to do what I tell you. That's aggressive. I need your cooperation is a very straightforward request. I would appreciate your cooperation. Again, very straightforward. Some people might think that's too passive. I don't. I think it's polite. But you work with yourself as long as it's assertive and you're not fumbling around with, gee golly whiz, maybe it'd be okay if. We don't need those things. So assertive is I win, you win. Win, win. And confidence, I just want to recap. Confidence is a feeling you get when you're assertive. Assertive is something that you do. It's an approach. It's a way of being. And I will tell you, and this is something that has improved for me so much over the years. It's almost, I feel a lot of shame when I think about this. I was in my 20s, probably mid 20s, and I had this job, and I came across like a ding dong. I came across like I had, like I was, I hate to use this dumb blonde. I came across like I was a dumb blonde, the dumb blondes that are depicted in all the characterizations. Now, I don't think blondes are dumb, but you know what I'm talking about when I say that. The ditzy, flirty, oh gosh, I don't know. That's how I came across. And it was partly because that's how I knew to get what I wanted. and what I needed, and because it's what I knew. And that was redundant, I guess, but it wasn't who I was. Inside, I knew I had some skills. I didn't know how to express those, and I certainly didn't have the confidence. So I remember one time I gave a speech, very short, maybe 10, 15-minute speech to a group of coworkers. And I remember my supervisor, boss, coming up to me afterwards and saying, like, with this absolute look of amazement, like, I had no idea you were capable of that. And it's because I came across like a ding dong. That's what I put out there because I did not have confidence in myself. I did not have the belief in myself that I could be taken seriously, that I was intelligent, that I was incapable. In the last 15 years, the feedback I get from people is, my God, when you walk into a room, you exude confidence. And it's because I feel confident. It's like me, don't like me, doesn't matter to me. This is what I know. This is what I don't know. I need to learn from you, and I have something to offer as well. So, and a friend of mine who I went to the yoga training with, she said, every time I want to walk into somewhere feeling confident, I picture you walking into that when I first met you. And that is a big compliment to me because of how far I've come. Not because I'm bragging, but because I have gained confidence by doing, by learning and doing, by taking baby steps and by practicing, getting the input of professionals and peers, and learning to use these skills over time. I have learned to be assertive. I speak assertively. I speak confidently. I ask for what I need. I ask for what I want without an expectation that the world's going to bow and give it to me just because I've said it. So remember, confidence is a feeling that is fueled by standing up for yourself, asking for what you want, asking for what you need. And if you're thinking, my God, that seems as far away as the other side of the Atlantic Ocean from where I'm at right now, I want you to understand that that's how far it felt for me too. When I first started this journey, when I first started in therapy, I literally remember sitting in a group therapy session, looking at all the people around me, and I'm thinking, I think I was like 29 or 30, and I'm thinking, I look at these people in this room and they all look like adults, and I feel like I'm 12. I felt like such a child inside. I had a lot of growing up to do and a lot of things to practice to become more assertive and confident. And so, even though standing up for yourself, asking for what you need in an assertive, win-win manner may seem impossible to you now, it's not. It's baby steps, one step at a time. So confidence is a feeling, assertiveness is an action, and they beget each other. The more confidently you feel, the more assertive you are. The more assertive you are, the more confident you become. So look for words and phrases. I need, I want, I would appreciate. I need help. I need your assistance. I would appreciate this restaurant, those kinds of things. So you got to prove to yourself that you can do it. And you prove it by doing it. You got to start somewhere. It's kind of like, how do I get a job when I don't have any experience? They want experience. Well, you ask. Somebody's going to give you a job, and then you have some experience and you feel more confident going to the next interview. Same with this. You practice it, and then you feel more comfortable doing it. Don't be apologetic. I need a moment with you. I need to speak with you. I need you to understand that that is too tempting for me. I would appreciate if you'd keep it out of the house. Get rid of the, I hate to bother you. I know this might sound stupid. Get rid of that kind of stuff and cut the excess. All right, so there's our first skill, and we're going to combine all three of these, the three being assertive communication, boundary setting, and then framing a conversation. And you are going to become such a beautiful version of yourself in following through and standing up for yourself and not caring as much what people think about you. You're not even going to recognize yourself. All right, let's review this business of boundaries. We've also done several podcast episodes about setting boundaries. You may have read the book Boundaries by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. Amazing book. we did another book study on boundaries, which I loved, and I can't think of right now, but it was an amazing book and it was funny. And the author of this is a woman, and she gives yellow light, red, she gives green light, yellow light, and red light boundaries. So for example, and what she does with this, I'm sorry, I can't think of the name of it, but it was really good. She says a green light boundary would be just a simple phrase like, please don't bring sugar cereals into my view. So they continue to do it. So that was the green light one. You gave them a nice, straightforward, assertive statement. Second one is a yellow light. It's kind of like, now you're ticking me off. I've asked you to not bring those where I'm at. I would really appreciate your cooperation with this. So now again, I said the same thing, only I emphasized it a little more. I added a little bit more, reiterated. Now the kids keep bringing them and putting them in front of you, leaving it, or your husband or your partner, or whatever it is. All right, the red light one is, I've asked you several times not to put this where I can see it. It's too much of a temptation for me. And if you bring it and leave it in my presence again, I'm going to dump the entire box down the garbage disposal. I love that because you're setting the boundary, you're reinforcing the boundary, and then you're saying you're not respecting what I'm asking of you. And if you do it again, this is going to be the consequence. And Jefferson Fisher does a similar approach. So I'll go over what he has to say, and I will find the name of that book and it will be in the show notes. So don't worry, I'm not just going to leave you hanging with that. But what Jefferson Fisher says is saying no is hard. And you and I know that. It is very difficult. And especially with the people that we have long-term emotional entanglements with, say our parents. You want me to say no to my mother? I'll feel so guilty. I could never say no to my mother. She'll be so disappointed. So we have these long-standing issues that get in the way of our being willing, not able, you're able, being willing to set boundaries with some people. He says saying no is hard. And again, for many, many reasons. And he goes into these. So this is Jefferson Fisher saying this. He said, you may have learned that saying no had a cost. And these are the examples he shares. Saying no to peer pressure made you feel left out. This is Connie. So maybe you drank in high school because you wanted to fit in, or maybe you did some drugs, or maybe you did things that maybe went against your values because you wanted to fit in. The question is, are you, as a grown adult, still doing these things? That may not be okay. If you are doing things that go against your values, you might want to look at how big is this need for me not to feel left out, because the need is okay. You want to feel fit in, but if that need is overriding your values, it's not serving you well. And you need to learn a new skill. And that skill is saying, no, I'm not going to that restaurant. I'm not going to the buffet. I'm not going to the cafeteria. I am not going down the cereal aisle in the grocery store. I'm sticking to the perimeter. Saying no. You may have done that because you felt left out if you didn't. Here's another example. He says, saying no to your parents or a teacher meant punishment or discipline. Now, that punishment or discipline could have come in the form of, I'm disappointed in you. Oh my God, are there any words that are more hurtful to a child? Or it could have come in the form of a slap across the face or a belt across the behind. So if your experience with saying no meant punishment or discipline, you might have a hard time saying no. He says saying no to certain activities made you feel like something was wrong with you or that you wouldn't be liked. Again, the need to be liked, very important, very critical for all of us. But when the need to be liked supersedes you're doing something that's not healthy for you, your priorities are out of whack. And learning to set boundaries helps keep you follow through with what you know you need to do to get that weight off or keep that weight off, or live according to your values when it comes to whatever it happens to be. So he says, so you acquiesced or you compromised or you people pleased for the sake of everyone else's peace except your own. I just want to keep peace. Oh my God. maybe, the household was chaotic and you just wanted to keep peace, so you did everything. That was me as a child. I tried to clean the house so my mother wouldn't be upset. I tried to get my dad his cigarettes and his beer so he wouldn't be upset. I tried to make sure everything was okay. I was a people pleaser at a very young age to try to keep the peace. I don't do that anymore. If I say something and you don't like it, well, too bad. I have to maintain my own boundaries. I will not go to the buffet with you, but I'll meet up with you all afterwards. So my need to be liked and included doesn't override my need to put myself in a dangerous situation for me. So learning to set those boundaries is another way that is something that requires practice, and it's something that requires you believing in yourself enough not to care if people like you or approve of you or think you're all that. But that's tough if you come from a background that is steeped in that. So maybe you prioritized other people's comfort and desires over your own well-being, often at the expense of what you really wanted. Over time, it turned into a pattern. Overcommit, then you stress, then you resent, and then you repeat. That's what we talked about last week. That's what people pleasers do. They do for others. They don't take care of their own needs. They do things at their own expense. Not healthy, not healthy, not healthy. Shows you don't know how to set boundaries. So you have the ability. When I say you don't know how, that's different than saying you don't have the ability. You have the ability. You're an adult. You're a full put together adult. All right, I know you may debate that. I have a shirt that says, we are not all let's see. We may not have it all together, but together we have it all. I like that shirt. Anyway, you got to stand up for yourself. And in order to do that, you have to have the ability to set some boundaries. You have the ability. You have to be willing to do it, and you have to know how. So in this section, we're going to talk once again, and you need to hear these things over and over and over again. And one day you're going to go, oh, that makes sense, as if you've not heard it 400 times before. But that's how we learn. All right. So what you can do, no matter what, no matter if you gave into peer pressure, no matter if your need to be liked took precedence over your need to keep yourself safe in some situation, whatever, you can learn. You can learn or relearn that it is okay to prioritize your well-being, to take care of yourself, that your needs matter as much as other people's. And this doesn't necessarily mean at their expense any more than at your expense. So we want win-win. And when you do that, you're going to find that it makes you healthier, happier, and more genuine. All right. So to start building your confidence, you need to learn to start to say no. And remember what we learned in the previous section. Keep it simple. I can't. I'm not able to. That won't work for me. And that's where we're going to stop. What a stopping place, right? Right in the middle of our second section on boundary setting. But I don't want to get into the next section because it's a 3-step process. But for now, go over what we talked about in terms of assertive communication. Win-win, say what you think, get rid of those extra words, and then boundary setting. It's very difficult. So be compassionate with yourself, realizing that it's not that you can't say no. It's that you, A, don't have the skills or haven't learned how, or B, are afraid to, but you can. So all I want you to do with the boundary thing for this week is realize that you can, you just haven't, for fear of whatever, being left out, being criticized, being disciplined, being a disappointment. All right. So start your list. Here's your action item, your Winformation action item for this week. I want you to make a list of assertive words. And I've given you quite a few. I want, I would appreciate, I need. And then no, saying no in short phrases. I'm not able to do that. I'm unwilling to do that. That won't work for me. I can't do that this time. So phrases of ways to say no and assertive words to start your asks with. I need, I want, I would appreciate. And then write out some sentences. Try maybe 2 or 3 and stick them on your mirror and try them this week. Please contact me. Let me know how those work for you. Next week, we're going to finish up with the boundary section and then an amazing skill and tool that you're probably not as familiar with as you are with either assertive communication or boundaries, framing a conversation. And then we'll put them all together. And you will be on your way to getting up off that floor and being a doormat no more. All right, my friends, thanks for joining me. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.